This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where Refresh Gaming got the conversation started at 7:59 a.m. He understands. Dark horse for 2025, whatever team pulls out of the crab bucket that is the Big 12. Yeah, we are going to be running through all the different conferences in college football. It is the Dark Horse episode. Very excited to give you some of those picks a little bit off the radar, a little bit deeper down on the odds board that we think can contend for conference championships, that we think can contend for the college football playoff, and so much more. We've got Bud Elliott right now coming to us from the West Coast, getting up early. We appreciate that, Bud. You are there to cover Elite 11. And so I guess first, how we doing? You know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and what's on tap for one of the premier recruiting events of the calendar year?
So new laptop. So I think my mic is doing a better job of not cutting out with the old laptop.
Let's go.
Yeah, I had my backpack was open and it literally fell out and cracked in half, like vertically. So that was not the best result for the laptop. But we will see. It did forget the ring light, so lighting a little sketchy this morning. I thought it was really nice, Chip. I got to say, I think North Carolina's got a dude in Travis Burgess, man. Yeah, I've been a little skeptical of some of the recruiting stuff that Belichick's been doing. You know, I'm kind of like, okay, they're taking that kid, they're taking that kid. This guy I like. Much bigger in person. I think there's some real value still in not just scouting off the huddle and going to see these guys in person. And he threw the ball a lot better than I thought. And speaking to some of the coaches out there, they're like, man, once we get the mechanics cleaned up a little bit, I think he can unlock a lot more velocity. And that's something we talked about last year. That all the coaches out there were talking about CJ Bailey. If you can fix his stride length some, which I think NC State did a nice job of doing that, unlocking a little more consistency and a little more velo with Bailey. And we know Burgess is a good athlete, but I really think that he's showing a lot of promise out here. So I was like, ooh, okay, that guy's got tools. He really does. Also, Duke's kid, Terry Walker. I know his career completion percentage is like under 50%, but with the transfer of high schools, maybe a new offense will help him out a little bit. Sometimes we do see that. Like typically, the analytics say, man, like don't touch a kid if his completion percentage is that low. But man, I thought he had some really nice balls out there, and that was impressive. The chat. I thought Darion Coleman threw it well. I'd like to see, going forward. Like we already know he's good, right? Like how well does he layer the ball? That's the Miami commit, Darion Coleman out of Orlando Jones. With him, he's a shorter kid, right? And he's very, very skinny. The release is crazy quick. And the RPMs are nice. Like this kid does, he spends it well. But because he is a shorter guy, I want to see how he layers the ball, like with some more touch. But man, he can absolutely sling it, and it comes out in a hurry. Diabell looked really good. Again, it's just one night, and they're running 5 stations. And if you're one guy, you can only really watch one station at a time for the most part. Maybe 2 if you step back and kind of just, with the downtime, you're trying to watch both. But I would say there were probably only 2 kids that I just had on my list that were like, all right, they're filler, for this event, everybody else, like I was pretty positive on like 16 as far as, upside and some traits.
And we've got 3 more days of events. What's the calendar here? Two more days. And then
this would be a lot.
And then on Monday, we'll get the full report, right?
Yeah,
Monday we'll do a full report. I know. Keep it locked into all of Bud's social channels, Cover 3 social channels. But we'll be clipping what we can, sharing what we can, and then on Monday here we will reconvene with the full report of what we saw. It's an exciting time to be able to talk to the players, but also the people around the players that can give you better insight into what we're looking at. You're talking about Carolina and Duke quarterbacks. I don't know what world this is right now. So clearly the upside down in terms of the Elite 11 quarterbacks. Guys, Tom, I need to ask. I'm going to make a motion. See if you can second this. I think we've got a lot of interesting actual football conversations to have. Can we just punt college football playoff updates and college football playoff meetings into the future?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, cool. Because I got to tell you this.
No.
Too many times we get hung up talking about 5+11 or 4-4-2-2-1-1 hike. And we need to be out here being able to get into some of these dark horses. We need to be out here being able to actually talk about some of these teams that might not be in the AP top 25 when the preseason poll comes out that we think might be poised for a good season. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. Let's plow ahead with a little bit of our annual dark horse conversation. Yep.
Can we talk about like one motion here, but not about the playoff? So Robert Michael in the chat said, do the Elite 11 guys know where they're going to transfer yet? I did laugh. But also, 12 of the 14 teams that are highest in the college football playoff, like to make the playoff odds, have a quarterback they signed out of high school. As long as you count Sayin as like a high school kid. He was on Bama's campus for like 3 days, and then the stuff happened with Aaron Nolan and Saban retired. But realistically, that's just like the finalization of a high school recruitment. So maybe we're getting back to like signing good guys out of high school and developing them for a couple of years. I don't know. I think all the COVID 25-year-old dudes phasing out of the sport is making high school recruiting a little more important now.
Thank God.
And player retention being a priority.
Yes.
And
you got a guy you pay to keep him.
Yeah. When we started,
you didn't lose Josh Hoover to Tennessee.
Yeah, when you've got it, then you make sure that that's what you're going to be spending money on. You've gotten some market corrections, and the players that chase bags, it kind of ends up just being part of the personality or the DNA of the kind of player you've got. Might be a hit, might not, but some of those top programs in the country, as Bud mentioned, they're getting them out of high school. They are getting them from places like the Elite 11. All right, we are going to begin in the Big Ten, and one of the conversations we had before we got started is what defines a dark horse. And frankly, guys, I actually like that discussion because it allows us to draw a line in the sand somewhere. But I know you have Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and the question is Michigan. Does Michigan count for a dark horse? Tom, what say you?
No.
I say no.
Michigan.
I agree. Michigan in the odds board is in a weird spot because they are statistically they are significantly ahead of everybody else. And they are behind, also meaningfully, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State. So they were kind of in the no man. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State are clearly not dark horse caliber here, according to the odds this year.
And then there's the Grand Canyon, and then there's Michigan.
Right. And then there's a decent sized valley, and then everybody else.
Yeah. From that standpoint, I would argue Michigan's a good value play. I don't know if I'd call them a dark horse.
Right. Also, the soft factors here. Michigan, it can't be a dark horse if you're national champion 2 years ago. That's what you're charging.
That's in the Constitution. Yes,
yeah, that is true. All right, but what about the very next team there? But I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out. I've mentioned it on bold predictions. In on USC. Anybody gonna bite on USC as a dark horse team? I think that's a fair pick. Plus 2,400 to win the Big Ten at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. It is not super bold as it is the first available after we have drawn the line, but I continue to dig in on this, and I continue to consider what it looks like a conference schedule draw that sets up pretty well for them, especially compared to the rest of the Big Ten. Anybody else in on USC as a dark horse in the Big Ten?
I don't hate it. Your receivers are fantastic.
I think so.
I think if they get better quarterback play this year, if the defense continues to ascend, I think USC is a pretty decent dark horse pick there. And quarterback being the wild card, you almost have to feel pretty good about Lincoln Riley's track record of getting quality quarterback play. We know Louisville is excited about Miller Moss, and they let Miller Moss walk. So what does that say about Lincoln Riley's belief in the guys who he has? They also didn't, at least to my knowledge, didn't pursue many, if any, quarterbacks in the portal. So that is probably pretty encouraging.
I'm not going to say it's unrealistic. I mean, I think when you're looking for a dark horse, it's a good pick. But my concern is last year, this team sucked on the road. Like they were very different at home compared to when they left the Coliseum. And they've got a road game at Notre Dame. Of course, that doesn't impact their Big Ten standing. So even if they got pasted there, they would still have the same record in the conference play. But if you look at their road games in the Big Ten, they start with the road game against Purdue. Not really worried about that, but they're on the road for Illinois, Nebraska, and Oregon. And considering the games that they lost on the road last year, I have a difficult time thinking that they're going to go through those 3 games, only losing one of them.
Do you attribute some of that to just being year one in the Big Ten? Like there's going to be like some adjustment to what you're going to be doing in terms of the travel?
For sure. You could put some of it on there because we saw overall, like the teams in the league, whether you'd been in the league for a while or not, going from the West Coast to the East Coast, they struggled like to a man, every single one of those teams when they were making those trips. Even the games that they won were typically kind of closer battles than the spread would have suggested or you would have expected from their other games. So I still think the familiarity does matter, but I think it's just the travel in general right now. That's probably the bigger factor.
One thing that I have on my notebook is what needs to happen for this to come through is that defense took a step forward from being horrendous, like bottom 30, 35 in the country to being okay, not an absolute negative. I think you need more steps forward there. If USC is going to be able to win some of those tough road games, it needs to be more improvement, not a continuation of what we saw last year in terms of production. All right, Tom, let's keep it in the Big Ten. Who do you have your eyes on as a potential dark horse?
All right. I think I know who Bud's is, so I'm going to leave that to Bud. And if it's not, I'll jump in with it later. So I'm going to go with Nebraska. I think that obviously losing Tony Gibson from the defensive coordinator, it doesn't help, but I do think that it'll be mostly a seamless transition there as far as what they're doing on defense because it's still going to be the same overall system. And I just think that they have in a year in which you look at the Big Ten quarterback situation and there's a lot of question marks. There aren't very many programs outside of that top 3 who could sit there and say, hey, we've got a 5-star quarterback. Nebraska's the one that does. Like they have the 5-star guy. And he's going into his second year as a starter. And we often see guys go from freshman to sophomore year. They either take the leap or they don't. Like I always feel like if they don't make a step forward, they're probably just not going to at any point. They probably just are who they are. But if Raiola takes that leap this year, I think it greatly increases what the ceiling of this team can be in 2025. And you look at the way their schedule breaks down, they only have one truly difficult road game, and it's at the end of the year, and it's Penn State. That's not going to be fun for them, but they get Michigan at home. They get Michigan State at home. Northwestern's at home. USC's at home. Iowa's at home. The non-con is not incredibly difficult, so I don't think that they're going to be bruised and battered before conference play starts. I just think that this is the kind of team where I look at that schedule. If they're able to take out Michigan on CBS on September 20th, and they're off to like a 5-0 start, going on the road to face Maryland, that kind of confidence and the way that they'll be feeling, I think could carry them through the back half of that schedule to where they're very much still in the running for the conference title towards the end of the year.
I don't hate this at all. I mean, you're betting on the upside of a guy that we know has pedigree and real tools at quarterback. Like if Nebraska has a big time quarterback, then I think they could get there, and if he's playing at that level that they hope he plays at, then they could win it. I think this makes all the sense in the world.
So, yeah, the question in the tailgate, and we're going to keep this kind of fluid. So, when we're talking about a team, we're not going to bounce around too much. The question is, are you talking dark horse to make the playoff, dark horse to win the conference? I think that those are, in some of these conferences, the same conversation. We just might direct you to one price or different, but very different conversations in the Big Ten and in the SEC because you've got more of a path in terms of being an at-large. Nebraska, to make the college football playoff, plus 650 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more, plus 3,700 to win the Big Ten. Which side would you play for that one?
I think it depends on how much of your analysis is that you like the schedule, right? If your analysis is really you like the schedule more, then I think you probably prefer the playoff.
Yeah.
if your analysis, you think that they're really, really going to be good, then you could actually survive like a game against, we're assuming, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon in some order.
It's
right?
the Indiana path. That's what I was looking at. I
Correct.
was like, I think I would rather have Nebraska to make the playoff, imagining that they go on some fever dream 10-0 start. They get humbled by Penn State. They level out against Iowa, and then all of a sudden you're just right there with the win total that the committee's going to respect, no matter what your strength of schedule is. So I think I would rather have that. Is that check out?
No, I'm kind of there with all these other Big Ten dark horses. Like, I mean, I think the odds reflect the reality of the situation. Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon are probably the 3 best teams in that league, and they all have question marks. But I feel like the odds of all 3 of them cratering to the point where they can't win the Big Ten at the same time are very, very minuscule. So when it comes to these dark horse conversations, I feel like it's the 4th team that I think is more of the dark horse than anything. I think that top 3 is pretty solid in all reality.
I was imagining the Nebraska future, wrote about the Cornhuskers as a long shot CFP pick. And I was thinking, with Dana Holgorsen, a full off season to work with Dylan Raiola, I think that the defense is going to take a step back because of some of the players that they lost and also the coaching loss of Tony White. Like, could Nebraska just be one of those 45-42 type teams?
Yeah, I think their defense will be better than that, though.
Okay.
I don't know that there are enough teams who are going to put 45 on them, but they could be a little more pointsy than
points. Yeah, I guess 45-42 is the wrong, but just the idea that last year, I think the only team that they might have only put up 40 plus points once all year. I mean, it was a team that was, winning lower scoring games and not asking Dylan Raiola to go out there and do video game stuff at all. He just needed the right drive and the right plays at the right time. I was wondering if, with the steps back on defense, Dana Holgorsen, not afraid to get out there and really let it rip. I could see Nebraska being a high flying, fun team to watch.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. The guy in the chat said can't.
Maybe he's just deaf.
Maybe if you're watching on your phone, maybe don't have your phone on silent. That's my tip there. Also hit like.
Yeah, also like the stream. Thank you, Crescent. Okay, Bud, where do you want to turn our attention?
So I think they're like legitimately, if we're going dark horses,
5 teams that I thought would be fun to discuss. So I'm curious where you're going next.
Yeah, I had like 6.
Sick.
Actually. So if we're thinking dark horse, implied in this dark horse conversation is probably that in this hypothetical that the top 3 teams are maybe not like Death Star enabled, right? Maybe the loss of the receivers at Oregon with the Evan Stewart news, maybe that hurts a little. Maybe Penn State's offense never takes another step. Maybe Ohio State just doesn't mesh the same way that they did last year. So yeah, but I guess I'm more quiet than the other 2. It says so. I'll try to work on my levels there by talking louder. Okay. So I actually went with Washington.
Knew it.
Okay. and I think it's an interesting play. They're actually, what are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th to win the league. There's some 7,500 out there if you want.
You've got some like 10-1 neighborhood to make the playoff with Washington too.
So here's kind of my thoughts on this, right? Obviously, Damon Williams needs to be a stud. I had him in my top 10 quarterback rankings. I think he is actually really good. I like the combination of him and Jed Fish. They have a stud at receiver. They have a really good back in Jonah Coleman. So, yeah, I think they will be pretty fine offensively. Defensively, I do have some worries, but it's possible they can hold their own. Now, if you look at the schedule, look, they're going to have a lot of travel because they're freaking Washington and they're playing in the Big Ten. So almost every trip is a long trip, and you do have to factor that in. But for the Big Ten purposes, you have to play Ohio State. That sucks. If you have to play Ohio State, I think I'd rather play Ohio State early rather than late, and they do. Now, coming off the Apple Cup, that's no fun, and you have to go around and play a potential trap game at Maryland. But if you're good enough to be in the actual dark horse conversation, you're not sweating Maryland, okay? Like home, road, on the moon, doesn't really matter. Like, you should smoke Maryland if you're a team that's really like in contention to win the Big Ten. Rutgers at home, that's a nice little breather. Then you got to go to Michigan. Here's where I think this is an interesting schedule that could lend itself to Washington, actually winning the Big Ten or getting to the championship. And I know the chat says it's a tough Big Ten schedule. I don't disagree. What if Michigan sucks? Like, what if that offense isn't any good? And what if the defense takes a step back after losing like the best defensive tackle tandem we've seen probably since that Georgia team had Jalen Carter and the other guy there? Illinois at home is a lot better than Illinois having to play on the road. At Wisconsin, I mean, what are the odds Luke Fickell is fired by November 8th? I think 50-50. Like they're going to be one of the top jobs open this year, assuming he gets fired and their win total keeps going down. So I don't think
don't you think Uncle Barry wants you to finish the year? I mean, I feel like Uncle Barry wants to lead you to it and make you really like sniff it so that you can just sit in it.
I don't think he gets fired unless the bottom's out.
Unless the team quits, and I don't know if the team's going to quit.
Purdue, I think Washington would play Purdue today. Next year, doesn't matter. Like that. That should be a dub at home. At UCLA, we have no idea how that's going to work. Maybe it works great, but maybe it doesn't. And then Oregon at home. I think Oregon is a very high variance team this year. I can see them being really good, but they have not played a lot of these young guys who they signed. So it's not like, oh yeah, they've got 12 dudes who played 200 snaps last year, and then we know they're ready. We don't know they're ready. We know what the recruiting pedigree was. We don't know about Oregon's player development yet. That's not me knocking Oregon's player development, by the way. It's not saying like, hey, I don't think they can develop players. We just don't know yet. This will kind of be the proofs in the pudding year for Dan Lanning. So there is some potential variance that makes this really hard Big Ten schedule maybe not quite as hard if things break a certain way. And that's kind of my point, right? Do I need to take another step to the right? I'm going to move the computer to the left because I'm actually blocked out by this desk.
Yeah,
so that's kind of that's what I like really high upside quarterback. I think there is a potential for this schedule to be slightly easier than maybe it appears on paper. And they could absolutely lose 5 games, 100%, as the chat points out. Yeah, we're picking dark horses here. I think that's a fun one.
You mentioned it, and I do think there's an alternate universe where Washington is still in the Pac-12, Larry Scott is still Pac-12 commissioner, and Washington is playing games on the moon.
We did make those jokes about Larry Scott being so on the forward, the futuristic models here. He was going to put the Pac-12 title game on the moon, sell the rights to it, sell the rights to the moon, instant profit. Could have kept the league together, Larry. I really like what if Ohio State doesn't have it together, right? So because Ohio State's going to start with Texas, everything's going to be built into that. They get 2 more games and then a super early off week in advance of the trip to Washington. Yeah, what if all the turnover gives them that? And this is where I would like Washington better as a CFP team, as an at-large, because that win would be a silver bullet. Because I do not expect Ohio State to lose 2 regular season games. Like if that's where Ohio State trips up and then they get everything together, go on a run, you'd be sitting there. Even if you lose to Oregon, you're going to be maybe even one more game. You'd be 10-2, and you'd be sitting there at the committee table, and you'd have that Ohio State win, and that would be a huge, huge piece of it. So, yeah, at some of the 10-1 playoff odds, I kind of like those as dark horse options. I got a couple more that we could discuss. Who would be the next up on Big Ten? Who would be the next team that you'd be pressing in terms of getting a top dark horse status here in the Big Ten?
I'm going to save my number. Well, I'm going to save my number 2. I think Tom will probably go with it, but I'm going to take Iowa. What if Gronowski is really that good?
Yeah.
The FCS transfer quarterback they got. I think if he's really good, I do think Iowa will still be a quality team defensively. That's a possibility there.
Am I supposed to say Illinois?
I was thinking so, but
I'm not saying it. Keep it.
They're not a dark horse. That's a top 25 team.
No, just keeping them humble. They're feeling themselves lately. They're out and about, talking a lot, and I enjoy it. But I'm just trying to, I don't want to be gassing them up too much. But yes, they are.
Is it possible that there is a humbling season for Iowa this year?
Yeah.
Did you see 6-6?
I mean,
6-6 doesn't sound right for Iowa football. 8-4 sounds right for Iowa football as I imagine it, but
it's like I have to find 6 losses. Like Okay, Penn State they could lose, Oregon they could lose, Iowa State they could lose, USC they could lose on the road, Nebraska they can lose. Yeah, 6-6 is not completely out of the picture. I mean, they did go 7-5 or 8-4 in the regular season last year.
Yeah, I think that's where I am. Where it might be a little bit sneaky difficult in terms of Iowa just being in. Rutgers is probably more of a coin flip than you realize, and that game is on a Friday night in Piscataway. Indiana, I'm not expecting that to be a huge step back, maybe a little step back, but that looks like a coin flip type game. Minnesota could be a coin flip type game. We'll see where Michigan State's at, but Iowa and the potential end of the Kirk Ferentz era, I'm very curious to see if results at all end up having play a role in that storyline.
That back half of the schedule, context-wise, it's not easy. Starting with the Penn State game, and then you've got Oregon, you're at USC, you're at Nebraska. I mean, you're going to have to score points to win some of those games, and that's going to be the thing. Can they score points? Because defensively, there's an expectation that they're not going to be terrible defensively. They'll be able to stay in most games, but can they score enough to win them?
Did they boat race Michigan State last year?
I believe so.
A few teams did.
I know.
Yeah, it's hard to remember everybody who boat raced Michigan State.
It got really bad for Sparty down the stretch. That was actually one from the tailgate. Tailgate offered up a, if Aiden Childs hits type proposal. Here's my pushback on Michigan. Yeah, I don't think Michigan State is there from a personnel perspective yet elsewhere.
Agreed.
If Aiden Childs hits, might be
Iowa lost to Michigan State.
Okay. There was a meteor. There was a comet. There was a weird game as I was combing over results recently. Michigan State had their everything clicked. They won like 40-22 or something like that.
It was 32-20. And amazingly, Cade McNamara never started another game for the Hawkeyes afterwards.
This is Michigan State also has one of the tougher conference draws in the Big Ten. They are going to be cycling in your Penn State. That you are going to be having your Michigan. I guess they do avoid Ohio State and Oregon, but I don't see 7 wins. So I don't see 6 or 7 conference wins. I see something that's much closer to 500 or below 500. Even if Aiden Childs hits, there's just too much work to be done elsewhere.
I think 2-7 is far more likely than 7-2.
Great, well put.
Yeah.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to the Southeastern Conference, where everybody in the daggum league thinks they should be an at-large pick in the college football playoff. Which ones do we believe in the most? All that and more next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! No! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, of course, we got to start out with our guy Danny Kanell, the SEC's biggest fan. God, Danny's not here. Come on, Danny, don't taunt us like that. I don't want to see any photos of you having fun. You should be ripping these SEC teams apart right now.
What course is that?
I don't know, but it looks
from
like
that logo. Like maybe the chat can ID which course Danny's playing today.
We'll get a full golf report from Mr. Kanell in a little bit. Bud, why don't you get us started? In the clarification, who does not count? You said Texas, Georgia, Bama, LSU. So that would rule out. That would get us.
We can debate this. I just threw this together really quick when I was getting coffee.
Yeah,
I think the first 3 are pretty obvious, or the first 2 are really obvious.
I'll tell you. I wanted to push past. So you mentioned Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. I honestly wanted to push past Ole Miss and Texas A&M and just go ahead and get to that group at 20-1 or beyond. I mean, if Ole Miss or Texas A&M making the SEC championship game would be a first for either one of those programs. So arguing them as a dark horse to win the conference, I would believe it. Or either one of those teams ones you're bullish on?
I would argue there aren't any dark horses in the SEC because simply playing an SEC game makes you one of the greats. So I don't know. I feel like it's rude to call any of these programs a dark horse. They are all elite.
God, Justin Jefferson, Diego Pavia. I mean, so many So many 32-year-old SEC fans just have been out here throwing shade at the rest of the conferences as though it's the world's different.
I will
But
say, I feel like Justin Jefferson has more credibility behind saying
Diego Pavia.
Yeah, I feel like he was a little more accomplished in his time in the SEC than Diego has been.
Justin Jefferson and Diego Pavia both beat Alabama.
They did.
How about that?
Fun fact.
One lost to Georgia State. I don't know if Justin Jefferson lost to Georgia State. Feels like Georgia State would have played LSU when JJ was there. Anyway, Bud, why don't you get us rocking and rolling in the SEC? Where do you want to turn?
Okay, so with the abbreviated, with the updated.
If you want to highlight Ole Miss and Texas A&M, let's dig into it because all these teams we're talking about today is a fun part of college football for me as we're doing our prep, because we're going to beat the top 25, 30 teams into the ground leading up to the start of the season. It's this quality of team that I think we got a lot of intrigue.
I actually wasn't going to pick one of those. I'm just surprised that y'all wanted to have Ole Miss and A&M as a no-go. Like, I bet you if you take the average fan out there and say, hey, can you name any Ole Miss players? They would say no.
Right.
And like diehard SEC fans can probably only name one. And that's the quarterback if they're like really in on Austin Simmons. You know, with A&M, they can probably name, a few players? QB, Ruben Owens, the running back, but probably not many. Maybe if they really follow the transfer portal, they could name.
Well, I was going to say Ole Miss and Texas A&M both have wide receiver rooms made up of portal kids. So I'll tell you who can tell them. Oklahoma State fans can tell you that Deshaun Stribling is now playing at Ole Miss. Right now, the Penn State fans can tell you what Ole Miss's wide receiver room looks like right now. Alabama fans will say we didn't even want Caleb Odom. 6'5", and he never panned out. So maybe he'll work in Oxford. But
Milan's still there, just a different one.
I know, that's right. Hold on. So Princely is gone.
Yeah, Prince Will is there now.
Prince Will is
from Nebraska.
Yeah. Yep, right.
That's right. But where do you want to go, Bud?
I'm going to go with the Gators.
Yep.
Again, if we're picking dark horses, I think you have to have high upside stuff. Now, the schedule, which I know Mikey has, that's not an easy schedule. We'll get to that in a second. But like talking team first, like if you're going to have Lagway as your number one returning quarterback in the sport, obviously not Arch Manning edition because Arch Manning didn't start any meaningful games last year. I think you have to have the belief that team could do something special if it all clicks, right? At receiver, like if Dallas Wilson maybe hits early for them, I think you have to like what they have on the offensive line. Defense does bring back a lot of experience. Some of those guys are fairly good players. But to me, this is all Lagway. Like if they get 13 games of like very high end, top of his potential range Lagway, or hell, maybe you don't need 13 games. I mean, maybe you need like 8 good games. And they kind of have a gimme on their schedule in conference probably with Mississippi State. But there's certainly a path here, which is not an easy path. The at LSU game, like that team brings back a lot. That's not an easy win. They did beat them last year. That's still not an easy dub. The game hosting Texas, again, like have we seen Texas go and play a lot of difficult road games in the SEC? What was the hardest road game they played last year?
Well, we will this year because all the SEC games are flipped. They hosted all the big dogs. Now they'll go visit all the big dogs on their conference schedule.
So that's still a bit of an open question. And it's not like in the Big 12 that they had quite the same environments as the Swamp. At A&M, certainly not an easy place to go play. But, again, like we got to see it from Marcel Reed. There were a lot of games last year where he didn't look like a dude. Mississippi State, that's an easy win. Georgia, not easy, but also Kirby Smart has flubbed the transfer portal a couple years in a row. This year, I actually think he hit it. So just to be clear, Georgia fans, I think they're on the upswing with their portal stuff, but it's possible that they could beat Georgia. Florida fans will tell you they would have beaten Georgia last year had Lagway not gotten hurt. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but it certainly would have been a lot closer than if you had to play the kid from Yale. At Kentucky, again, I'm pretty out on Kentucky. I don't think they have much. At Ole Miss, a very big wild card team for you. Like they could be really good. They also could, kind of run out of magic potion when it comes to the transfer portal. And hosting Tennessee, I think Tennessee's a bit of maybe a build for 2016 this year. I think they had a bit of a pullback. So that's possible that they could get this done. I don't know what record you need to make the SEC championship game, but if you go 6-2 in the league, and one of those wins is over Texas or Georgia, I think your path to the title game is actually pretty well made because those are two important potential tiebreakers. Now, if you go 6-2 and you lose to Texas and you lose to Georgia, you're probably not making it because I think there's a decent chance both those teams do make it. Or like we said, the other teams that are not on the list, Bama, LSU, etc. But like, can you go 6-2? Can you go 6-0 against LSU, A&M, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee? It's not likely, but again, we're doing dark horse stuff here.
If Florida is 6-2 in conference play, they're going to the college football playoff as an at-large. I mean, this is the schedule where 9-3 gets you in the college football playoff.
So wait, we're talking losing at Miami, and then if they're 6
one of those wins has to be against Texas, and like if they beat Texas and Georgia and finish 9-3, I think that would be good enough. If they lose those games and finish 9-3, they're not getting it.
They do need. I think I agree with Tom. Like they would need one of those two games to be a lock at 9-3.
Okay, that's fair.
But also, like, it does depend on like how good is A&M, how good is LSU, how good is Ole Miss, how good is Tennessee, how good are Miami and Florida State. That's a lot of names. I think the odds are that one of those teams is going to be really good, and that would be a marquee win for you. But I think to guarantee it sitting here in June, A&M or Texas or Georgia, if you get one of those, you go 9-3. I think they're in.
6-2 in conference play, 3-1 in the non-con. You probably need to be.
I think they might have to beat both Texas and Georgia for that to work. There's a lot of teams and there's only 12 spots. And we saw last year, 2 losses is very important to the committee compared to 3.
Also, when did the losses come? Like last year, Bama getting smoked by Oklahoma in the second to last game of the year was not a good taste in the committee's mouth. If you finish really strong, I think you're going to have an argument, hey, like they kept playing well down the stretch, all that kind of stuff.
But Texas and Georgia, if those are the games, one of them's at home and one of them's in a very comfortable neutral site environment. So no road trips needed there. But I had Florida on my list as well. So much of it, obviously, riding on DJ. All right, Tom, where do you want to go?
This is something of a value play more than it is just straight dark horse, although they qualify. If you go through the odds board on FanDuel where you're making every moment more, you find South Carolina at 25-1 to win the SEC, which makes sense because it's South Carolina. It's never won the SEC, so it's not going to have good odds. But Oklahoma has better odds. Tennessee, without Nico, has better odds. Auburn has better odds of winning the SEC. So I think from a value play, you look at this South Carolina team, they were on the precipice of reaching the college football playoff last year. They came up a game short. You look at what they have returning. Lenore Sellers is back. Reportedly, he got offered $8 million and turned it down. And I will just say, Lenoris, buddy, if you got offered $8 million for real and turned it down, I don't like your decision making. But moving forward,
Chat said that was fake, by the way.
I would assume it was. I saw it floating around. Yeah. Okay. Good.
I have not seen the tweet nor seen it rebuked.
I was gonna knock that decision making rating down quite a bit because I don't know if you're gonna get $8 million in the NFL, buddy. So, but if Lenoris takes kind of a step forward, I think that will be very important. I think that they get most of their offensive line back. They got a transfer at center. They have their receivers back. On the defensive side of the ball, they lose quite a bit on the defensive line, but they brought in a lot of transfers. They get most of their secondary back. So I think there's experience on this team. And you look at this schedule compared to a lot of other SEC schedules, not terrible. Like you get Clemson out of conference, but if you lose that game, that doesn't impact your ability to win the SEC because you're already done playing in your SEC games. I think Virginia Tech is a game that they can win and should win. Vandy at home, they should win. Missouri on the road, I'm on the record. I don't think Missouri is going to be great this year. I think Missouri on the road is gettable. Kentucky at home, winnable. LSU on the road, Oklahoma, winnable. Alabama, we'll see. Ole Miss on the road, I don't know. I think there are a lot of winnable games here for the Gamecocks if things go right. And obviously, if I'm betting anybody at 25-1, I need a lot of things to go right. So I do think there's a value, and I think that they are I think they qualify. I think this is a team that is not getting the respect it deserves considering the year it just had and the amount of people it has coming back.
Do you need Sellers to basically play like the number one pick for that to happen?
Not the number one pick, but I need him to play like one of the best QBs in the SEC.
Yeah, look, if you get that, then I can't refute that. The only thing I would say is we talked about the guys that they had drafted on defense. They also had an additional 9 undrafted free agent signees, which for a team like Georgia or Texas doesn't matter. But for a team that recruits like South Carolina, to me, that does matter a lot. So they do get their receivers back, who kind of sucked last year, to be honest, but they'd lose Josh Simon, the tight end, who was their go-to guy. Now, I think they did a nice job in the portal. I think they'll be better at receiver and pass catcher this year, but they lose Simon, they lose Rogers, they lose the linebacker, Van Martin Scott, they lose Gage, the receiver they got from Miami, Ohio, who could really never stay healthy. They lose, Rocket Sanders, okay, whatever. But I think like losing Huntley is a fairly big deal on the D-line. Like that, he played a lot of snaps for them, the O-lineman, whatever. I don't know, man. Like that's also a lot of undrafted free agents who they lost.
But they also added Demon Clowney.
This is true.
I think South Carolina, to make the SEC championship game, probably needs to be 6-2. And as we mentioned, with any 6-2 scenario, you need to have the head-to-head tiebreakers. I forgot what the website was that created all of our tiebreakers that we needed, but South Carolina.
Yeah, I have it bookmarked somewhere, but I didn't organize
South Carolina would need to be in that kind of scenario. That's the way that South Carolina ends up making it. I will tell you that this is not only do you need Lenora Sellers, but man, they would need some injury luck. They would need an absence of attrition, because the way the schedule rolls out, the conclusion, the second half of that schedule, if you have injury issues on the defensive line or, any other position groups, they are going to get exposed against that LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Clemson. It's the kind of setup where if we were judging South Carolina by the standards of, hey, if you make a bowl game, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. This is a team and a schedule where they're going to be able to go out there, stack wins early. You hope they pick off someone late, but they'll be bowling. On the other hand, if you're trying to talk about winning the conference or making the CFP, I don't think I see it for the Gamecocks this year.
Haters.
Who do you see?
Oh, me? I'm going to take
old Chip.
Listen. Auburn could do it. I mean, they're like,
man, you're going to say that South Carolina can't, and then you're going to immediately follow it up by saying Auburn can.
Oh, and you know who else is on my list? Oklahoma.
Get the man. I'm
look,
out of here.
This Oklahoma love is going. It's all over the internet. I understand it.
Tom took himself out of the chat.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got Florida, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Missouri on my list for SEC dark horses. And it sounds like Tom hates every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ryan,
all right, let's hear
on Auburn,
the Auburn,
Nebraska, and USC.
So, this is a good
Ryan
point.
makes a good point.
What is the through line there? The most toxic fan bases? Like,
that you're just on they're backest programs out there. This is the year they're back. I feel it.
Auburn certainly looks like it's a 7-5 schedule, 4-4 showing in conference play. But I tell you, what if Jackson Arnold, some transfer portal additions, one of the best wide receiver rooms that Hugh Freeze says he's ever coached? What if you go out there and you start to stack a little bit early? You start to gain a little bit of confidence. I mean, there is so much pressure on Auburn to take a step forward that Hugh Freeze had the confidence at a golf tournament to say the expectations are to make a bowl game. Everyone loved hearing that, especially at this point in his tenure. But if you are going to buy into Auburn, you are buying into Jackson Arnold, wide receivers, the offense being much, much better, and just simply having a level up at the quarterback position is going to give you a chance for more success. The the schedule, as you can see right here, does give you a run that I liked a lot, where Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, you could stack some wins there before you obviously have the Iron Bowl, but the Iron Bowl is at home.
You
So
could also have 4 losses before you even get to that part of the schedule.
listen, you need some things to go right. You need some things to go right. Auburn's been a dark horse before. Auburn has been claimed to be a dark horse more than they have been a dark horse, but I will submit my Auburn pick. I will submit my Auburn pick on the record here as a team that's going to be able to take a step forward.
I don't hate it with that schedule. I mean, like, that is one of the more friendly schedules, I think, in the SEC. Do you get there at 6-2 if you're Auburn, or do the tiebreakers screw you?
I think if they're 6-2, they're going to have some tiebreakers in their back pocket. Just what are the 6?
What if the 6? What if the 2 are Georgia and Bama, and the 6 are Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vandy?
Then A&M's really the only tiebreaker that you got to worry about, I think.
Yeah, I think that
if A&M's losing at home to Auburn, they probably won't be in the picture.
Correct. Yeah. If you are actually like a SEC championship caliber team, like one that we don't have to fake, like this is a real matchup when we're previewing it for whoever they play, then you're not struggling with Missouri at home, at Arkansas, Kentucky at home, or at Vandy.
I saw Auburn's path as in a dark horse is they're just a 10-2 SEC team. And everybody would say, where are the wins? Where are the wins? And be pointing to it. I mean, 10-2 with losses to Georgia and Alabama against this schedule would be like Texas's profile last year.
Chip, I want to show bet with you.
Well, but Baylor might be very good. So 10-2 with that would at least give you.
Well, didn't Texas have the Michigan win? Like that would be about depending on.
That's true.
I think that the Auburn path is not necessarily to win the SEC. The Auburn path is against the schedule to finish 10-2 and then just have the propaganda machine, be talking about how incredible it is to win in back-to-back weeks on the road against Oklahoma and Texas A&M. No one has ever been able to string together wins against the Sooners and the Aggies before, they would say.
So Refresh Gaming says, how often a week are you faking it? I would say thankfully, because we cover the whole sport and aren't just locked in on the SEC or one league, very rarely. In conference championship week, we have to preview all of them. And a lot of it more is kind of like, oh, if this happens, it could be interesting. But like historically, and I was doing research on this morning, the SEC championship game is historically decided by more than 3 scores. That's both average and median. Okay. Like the median result is 17 points for the SEC championship historically. So for the most part, we don't get good games in conference championship weekend. Typically, they are stompings. So I would say for conference championship week, I do have to fake it sometimes if I'm stuck arguing the other side of like, hey, this could be interesting. Right?
Well, yeah,
kind of how it could be interesting as opposed to it will be interesting.
And I think longtime listeners know that we are ultimately just seeking whatever we think is the most interesting angle or topic to these matchups, which,
right, exactly.
Sometimes does have to be. And if we look at last year's SEC championship game, year 1 of them going no divisions, that game went to overtime. Like some of the blowouts that we have seen in conference championship games have happened because the Big Ten East was stronger than the Big Ten West, or the ACC Atlantic was stronger than the ACC Coastal. And as every conference, except for the Sun Belt, who we can talk about them more tomorrow, we love the Sun Belt. We might be all in on Sun Belt. Sun Belt is holding out with its divisions. Everybody else is going no divisions. I would guess we see less of those kind of blowout trends now that it's top 1 and 2 instead of division winners.
Chip, you haven't answered my show bet challenge.
What? I got to hear the bet.
Auburn and South Carolina conference wins.
Oh,
I
yeah.
get South Carolina, you get Auburn.
Yeah, that's fun. Show bet. 100%. All right.
$10,000.
Nope, I am out. That is a hard pass for me. I do not sign that. We have agreed in principle, and I'm going to walk away. This is like Frank Beamer in the University of North Carolina football program. Somebody go tell the NNO yes, but I'm going to tell you actually no.
I'm gonna take Auburn's side on that.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Can I? All right. Dinner bet.
Yes.
Dinner bet.
And
Yes.
when we're
Dinner
covering
bet.
the Big
Sounds
Ten
good.
championship in Indianapolis, we'll dinner.
I like it. Okay.
Love that.
Dinner bet.
Okay. We put it into the record. Anybody, any other SEC team?
I mean, Tennessee because of the schedule in theory, but I don't know that I truly believe that they have the guys to go to to hold their own if they make it. Nobody vouched for Oklahoma. I understand the argument. I just think it might be a stretch to think they're actually going to win the thing. You need a lot to go right.
Yeah.
Like you need the receivers to be healthy and ready and good. You need Mateer to be a real step up against good competition, which I don't know. At least we had seen Cam Ward play against a lot of Power 5 teams. To me, that's the difference. Mateer did it against basically a kind of a crappy Mountain West schedule, if we're being honest here. And I think he's a good player. I think he's a massive upgrade for Oklahoma, but we don't know. And we need the offensive line to be right. And we need the loss of some really important defensive leaders not to matter. And we need Brent Venables to actually become a good football coach as a head coach. We know he's a great coordinator. But if all that happens, sure. Totally agree. Love it. Their D-line's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is I do think there's a high floor.
Yeah.
You just, I know Thomas expressed some lack of, some not buying into the John Mateer, like of all these quarterbacks that we're expecting that. And then is it the change? I don't want to speak for you. Sorry.
Clarify. I buy into John Mateer as a really fun college quarterback. I do not buy into the idea John Mateer is the kind of guy who can lead Oklahoma to the SEC championship.
That's fair.
Totally agree. And yes, to people who are picking this part in the chat, these are dark horses, and we excluded like the top 7 or 8 teams. So that's going to be tough.
I think we need to.
And we need.
I think we
with
need
Auburn. You don't need Arnold to be great. I think you just need him to be good and kind of fixed.
Right.
Oklahoma needs Mateer to be like a top 10 pick.
Yes. Because of you're not as good elsewhere on offense, though they got better with the portal, spring portal era as spring portal window as well. I knew. Look, I was throwing newsy topics to the side, canceling topics, and still an hour is gone, and we've only gotten through 2 conferences. So I guess I don't want to just blitz through the ACC, the Big 12, and I still need to give you my sales pitch for Utah State. But like, you want to save that for Thursday? Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
works for me.
one update to the big old bag of mail, because we do want you to still be able to leave us a 5-star review, and in that review, put your question. That'll be the big old bag of mail. But we're turning on a new faucet because we've got a large and growing audience on Spotify. We appreciate all of you who are finding us there on Spotify. There are Spotify comments. And so we're going to say in the Spotify comments, if you've got a question for the show, something you want to posit, that is going to be another avenue we're going to begin to check. So for Thursday's mailbag episode, just to give you an idea, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. Maybe it'll be the following week when we start to get them into the show. So tomorrow, we will do the ACC. We will do the Big 12. We will do some of the larger Group of 5 college football playoff dark horses as well. Some of your questions from the big old bag of mail. Lots to get to. And it's June 18th. Fired up to be talking about actual football with you guys. So you can follow him on Twitter at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.